Welcome back. No matter where you live in the world, you are probably having to acclimate to the realities of a digital identity. Whether it's using your Apple Wallet for tap and pay or a digital credit card for express transit, we are all digital beings living in a rapidly evolving digital ecosystem. That digital identity now has proof points. The ability to build and share your personal and professional credentials in a highly secure, validated, and encrypted wallet that can greatly streamline your career mobility. I'm talking to Dan Giurescu, CEO and founder of Credivera today, and we dive deep into how this new world of digital credentials is making all of this possible, including addressing the critical issue of fraud in credentials management and identification. If you're a nurse or a healthcare worker, this episode is powerful and just for you, so let's jump in. In this podcast, we're setting the table for some powerful discussions with nurses, allied health professionals, regulators, tech innovators, and other thought leaders across the globe. Welcome to Care Anywhere, the Global Health Workforce Podcast, brought to you by True Merit. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Care Anywhere. I'm your host, Lea Sims. Let's jump into it. I'm so excited to welcome our guest today, Dan Giurescu. And he's going to talk to us and bring us all up to speed on the whole world of digital identities and digital credentials and digital wallets and help all of us really understand where the world is moving and where we're excited to be working with Dan and Credivera. So Dan, if you could introduce yourself, tell our audience a little bit about you, and then I'd love to dive in and really start talking about where the world is moving.
Pleasure, Lea. This is fantastic. I look forward to this.
Me too.
My name is Dan Giurescu. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Credivera. We're a technology company headquartered in Canada, and our focus has always been around bringing safety to the workforce and mobility of credentials and certifications and competencies of people worldwide. So about myself, I've been a tech entrepreneur my whole life. I've built a few other tech startups, scaled, exited, started again. And I always seem to find myself in a new environment every time. So I'm super, super excited about this. It's become more of a passion than I imagined it. And the more I get to meet with the folks that whose lives we touch, it just keeps opening up the world of where this is going to go and what's happening. So I'm very excited to be here and excited to be a partner with the True Merit team. So Lea, thank you.
That's a great segue. I was just about to say, for those that don't know, we recently announced a partnership with Credivera, or will be soon, likely putting that out. But I think the word is out on the street. We're going to
Yeah.
be equipping global healthcare workers with digital credentials, which we're excited to move into that space. So let's start by framing that out and explaining for our audience, our global audience, what digital credentials are, how they work, just fundamentally. So, what constitutes a digital credential, and where does that come from?
I think maybe it's worth providing a little bit of a history behind here. So we all started with paper credentials, paper diplomas, paper degrees, paper acknowledgement of knowledge earned fundamentally. And once we moved away from paper, we moved into what you would have considered as badges, right? So a digital proof of that time-stamped point in time when you earned something of value, whether it's a continuing education credential, whether it's an upskilling credential. It's something you took back to your employer and said, hey, by the way, look at me. I completed the course that you sent me out, and here's that proof from that said, course educator. Then we moved from that badge, which is a static point in time proof, we moved to digital credentials. And digital credentials were a way in which the employer can now say, well, I also trust that this is not something that you fabricated using your own PDF creators or your own, PNG creators, and that became a way in which you can say, hey, it's an authentic proof that allows you to know that this information is actually true and it's not manufactured by an individual. And then where we're moving as the world, we're moving into something called a verifiable credential or digital verifiable credential. And what makes a digital verifiable credential really interesting is the fact that it not only cryptographically secures the data in such a way in which it cannot be altered by the individual, but it also allows for the said issuer of that credential to have a control over the expiry of that credential, the sharing of that credential, and ultimately the revocation rights of that credential. And that becomes incredibly important in a world where, one, we're all moving at 1,000 miles an hour, technology is changing constantly, and with it also comes the ability for people to take this kind of data with them anywhere they go around the world. And the issuer that issued you that credential can now rest assured that you two are indeed connected anywhere you go around the world. You are trusted as an individual that received that credential. And just as important, especially when we start talking about things like designations or credentials that should really have an expiry component to it, that should make you go back and renew or upskill, to not just tell the world that you are skilled in something at the most recent level of that knowledge versus you've missed out on the last 5 years and you still say you're the top developer or you're the top doctor or top nurse when you haven't stayed up to date with all the latest and greatest. So it's a good way for everybody to create this new model of trust between the issuer, the holder of that, and then ultimately the recipient of it, which tend to be your employers, also known as your verifiers of that data, that they can trust that you are on top of your game fundamentally.
Absolutely. And for our audience's knowledge, when we use the word credential, I mean, we're focused specifically on work experience,
Right.
education, earned licensures and certifications, those really significant credentials that enable career mobility and the portability of our skills. But really, we're even more broadly to talk about that global landscape. A credential is any validation that you are who you say you are and you've done a thing that you say you've done that someone can validate. So
Yeah.
that's increasingly the world we live in as people move about the globe, whether it's for work or travel, recreation, whatever. There's going to be an increasing focus on being able to have digitally verifiable, credentials that enable you to do that. And so,
Yeah.
I'd love for you to talk about the global landscape back out of that more broadly a
Yeah.
little bit, because we all now, whether we know it or not, have a digital identity. And if you're using your Apple Wallet and you're tapping and paying and you're doing things, that's already moving us in a direction of understanding that we're now becoming digital beings. We have a digital presence
Yeah.
as we move around. I tell people all the time that it's kind of like, and we're being oriented to it gradually with things like Apple Wallet. It's very similar to what's happening in our cars. All of those auto assist and auto brake and all of those features, they are really getting us all ready for autonomous vehicles. That we are
Yeah.
gradually earning trust that we can turn that over to a car, which is a whole nother conversation. But that's a
Absolutely.
lot of times the way that acclimation to the digitalization of things is happening. It's not being thrown on us all at once. So could you talk a little bit about what digital identity is broader than just education or work
Mhm.
experience, like what's being instituted in the EU with Europass, which some of our listeners might not be familiar with. Where is the
Yeah.
world heading, broader than just education and occupational verification, right?
I love the word that you use, which is about acclimatizing people and not just feeling like it's an overnight expectancy, but it's something that you over time just go, this naturally feels like it's what I should be doing. So that's a very, very good way of putting it. Um, I think what's important for a lot of people to understand is a little bit of the background of where a lot of this stuff has started. I know many of us are used to, having your boarding pass on your phone, having your credit card on
Right.
your phone, having your rewards cards on your phones. And that was generally a great first step to get people to understand that there's a way that you can. It's funny because we kind of coined this, and I think we might even actually hold it. The tap to prove. I think we actually have that as a thing at Credivera.
Tap to prove.
Although,
Yes.
yeah, I'll talk to our lawyers, but I'm pretty sure we have that locked in.
Yes. Put a pin in that.
Yeah, but what's really neat is, so a number of years ago, for those of us that have done a lot of work with Europe and with the United States and places like Australia and New Zealand, you would have seen this concept of GDPR, which
Yeah.
is the digital privacy laws and regulations around personal data privacy and the ability for you to own your information, choose who should have access to it, and if you no longer want to participate with, somebody's programs, you have the right to be forgotten. And that's really where the world of GDPR took a very big first step in Europe to say, hey, companies, you should have more respect about people's data. And it was 10 years in the making, right? Like what felt like overnight for many of us, it was 10 years in the making by the European commissions and regulators and technologists that came together and said, we need to put the consumer information back into their hands so they can have the right of what they want to do with it. And as soon as GDPR got announced and approved in Europe, we saw the California state laws of data privacy get approved in the US, which was also a very important step forward towards digital ownership of your information. So what that's transpired into is over the years, you've seen the world starting to move towards something that's called digital identity. And what digital identity basically, following on the tracks of GDPR and other regulatory frameworks, what it's intended to do is it's intended to basically put that in your hands, but in a digital way, like in a way in which you can have portability and trust that the data is really yours. It was issued to you, and it wasn't issued to somebody else who might happen to have the same first and last name as you. So it was bound to your foundational identity. So in Europe, we're seeing a program called eIDAS, which is focused on the European identity specifications, such that as a European citizen, at the point in time in the near future when your physical identity card expires, you will now receive the next version of it will be digital. It will be issued to your native device, whether it's a Samsung, Apple, whatever device you're using. And many countries have taken those steps forward. So if you follow into the footsteps of Australia, New Zealand, Japan, many of the Southeast Asian community countries have all adopted this digital identity as a means of proof of you as a citizen of the world, and more importantly, as a citizen of that country, that you are who you say you are, and that you are eligible to participate in certain benefits, whether those are government-led benefits or others. So digital identity is not about it's going to come in the future. No, it's really showing up now. And many of you that are going to be watching and listening to us today might actually already have those digital identities issued to you, and you're currently using them as a day-to-day means. So you'll see, digital driver's licenses, you'll see digital health cards, you'll see digital government identities issued to you as those means of holding that data
We saw a little bit of this with COVID, people rapidly standing up digital vaccination verification so you could get through airport security and be able to travel.
Absolutely.
So that seemed to be a little bit of a precursor of what you're talking about. If they could stand it up that quickly, it can be done. It can
Absolutely.
be done. Yeah.
And what was really interesting is about the privacy compliances, right, that come along with it, right? Because you're, as we know in North America, we deal with a lot of HIPAA compliance, right, for your health information, and how strictly regulated the health information sector is for who should have access to it, for how long, what they can use it for, right? So obviously, the intent is that it doesn't get abused against you as a citizen. So
limited
the
use.
world, the world is moving this way, and we're what we're doing here, we're just trying to make sure that everybody is caught up to it and is comfortable with it and is able to use it regardless of the age and profession and the nationality or where you come
Yeah.
from. It's something that should be globally available. And at the same time, it's interesting to say something can be globally available, but it's about transporting that data with you and having a system in another country be able to read that data so then they can make sense of it. And that's ultimately called data interoperability. And those interoperabilities comes because we start working on generally approved standards and frameworks such that another system in another country can accept that data and knows what to do with it when they accepted it. So it's a now story. It's no longer about the future. And I know this is overused and overplayed all the time with the future is now, but this is the truth. This is just where we
Yeah.
are today.
Yeah. Well, and it's probably worth underscoring here too that this isn't a policing measure. It is a a streamlining. There's compliance, regulatory compliance tied to it. But I think it's important to underscore that this is really an empowerment of
Yes.
enabling people to move freely about the world and
Yeah.
have the security of knowing that they can be validated through these processes and also have control over how that's shared and when it's shared and with whom it's shared. So that's so important. And I know that you mentioned that, but I think it's important. It starts sounding like, oh, everybody's going to have one of these, and an enforcement measure, but it's really going to elevate the ability for people to move around and validate who they are and what they've done. More importantly, in
Yeah.
the arena that we're talking about with education, validating work experience, validating the validity of someone's transcripts, their licensures, et cetera. So I want to pivot a little bit to you
Yeah.
personally. How did you find your way into this space? What led you to founding Credivera and building this solution, and what drives you? You're so passionate about it. You're a great advocate and spokesperson for your brand and for this subject matter specifically. But what got you here?
So the last company that my co-founder and I, Elena, which by the way, we co-founded this company as well together. Um, we've always played the same role. I've always kind of been the front of the house and Elena's been the back of the house on the technology side. So she's always held the role of a CTO. Um, the last company that we built focused in what might sound like a very different space than we are today, but there's a lot of adjacencies to it. We focus on the transportation of dangerous goods. You're like, what does that have to do with what we're doing today? Well, in our journey as anybody that builds a company, you have to understand your user and your personas and
Yeah.
your clients really at the core. So you know whether you're truly solving a problem or not.
Yeah.
And what we found ourselves was in this supply chain traceability platform we built, we found that we were in our clients' job sites quite a bit. So think about an energy company that's generating products, and then a byproduct of those are dangerous goods. So those are
Yeah.
things that you have to track and mark and have the appropriate transporters come in and pick them up with the right equipment, so then they can take them to the right centrifuged facilities where they can then be cut and disposed of. And as we were doing this, we found ourselves with seeing a challenge with a lot of folks, unfortunately, that carried either expired certifications or credentials, or sometimes false credentials, to get into that job site to be able to do their work, but they would just buy those credentials rather than actually go through the education program, which ultimately puts lives at risk and safety at risk for those around them. Just because you try to cut a corner because you said, I don't have 2 hours right now to go get this, CPR course or this WMIS course. And you're like, but those are integral components to, if something happens on a job site, you probably should know how to give CPR, or you're talking about working with dangerous goods and materials. You probably should
Not the
have
time to be
WMIS,
bypassing your
right?
education.
exactly. But
Exactly.
just because you've done it for 20 years, it doesn't take you away from having to redo the course and be, with the latest and greatest knowledge of that business line that you're in. So when we started seeing that, it was a perfect example because Alana was heading up to a job site, to a very large oil and gas facility in northern Alberta here in Canada. And there was a convoy of trucks waiting to get through the door. And if most of you know about Alberta, we have some cold days out here. So if you're
Yeah.
here, if you're sitting here in February, you're getting a Arctic cold snap, it will be minus 40 degrees outside. And that's irrelevant of Fahrenheit of
You know I'm
Celsius.
in
It's
Florida, Dan.
minus
I can't
40.
even imagine minus 40 degrees. I couldn't
Right.
conceive of what
Now,
that feels like.
Now imagine, dealing with that Arctic cold snap, you're sitting outside and you have convoys of trucks. And I
Yeah.
mean, when I say trucks, I don't mean just disposal trucks, but like, the work trucks that you're
Yeah.
there with your crew and everybody's waiting in line for a few hours because you're trying to get to that front gate and show the front gate operator that you have all of your credentials to be allowed to go to that job site that day and to do your job. Well, many times we would watch these folks be turned around because they have an expired certificate in one
Yeah.
of their 20, 30 certificates that they carry at any given point in time. Like it's a highly regulated industry, so you carry a lot of certificates with you. So that led us to start thinking about, okay, well, what would it be like if you had a portable version of all these credentials in your wallet, readily accessible? You can scan at the front gate. It goes into your wallet and says, yep, you have all the preliminaries that are needed for your job site. That's one
Yeah.
side. But what if you were able to scan ahead of time a QR code of sorts that said, let me take a look before I even make that trek and that drive up to that job site, then I'm good to go into work that day. So then I don't get turned around, because turning around means not only missed work days, but also delaying of projects. So that's costly
Yeah.
for everybody. And there are certain credentials that certain people have to hold, which are crew-based credentials, which means at least one person in your crew of 5, 10, 20 people has to have all those credentials in good standing. What happens if you're now talking about folks that work on platforms like oil rigs, right, that need to be flown out? You're not allowed to land with that on that helipad if you actually don't have your credentials before you get off that
Yeah.
helicopter. So it can very quickly become a very exponentially large financial problem, as well as time-consuming problem and project-delayed problems for everybody. So that was one
Well,
of the
and
first things.
you touched on fraud there too, Dan. So you've got the person who can't get in because their credentials expired, and then the potential that somebody is getting in with a fraudulent credential, and
Absolutely.
digital verifiable encrypted credentials address both of those issues, right?
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
this is where it becomes a very interesting passion project for why we started what we're doing, is because we said, well, one, by doing it this way, by creating these digital verifiable credentials that are verified at source, that are continuously being looked at by the system against the source issuing system to say, hey, is this valid in this exact moment and point in time, such
Yeah.
that I don't put anybody at risk? That's critical for literally helping everybody down this previous example we just gave, to make sure that everybody can show up to site qualified, certified, and most importantly, competent to do their jobs. And not just the day they get hired, but every day that they're employed, whether contract, part-time, or full-time. That statement becomes almost mute. It's really about you as an individual being able to be ready for work. So that's what kind of created the passion of what are we going to do here. And healthcare became something that we honestly did not expect to touch as heavily as we are doing today. And I we're going to get further into this conversation here in a second for sure.
Yeah.
But it's an incredible space with a larger mobile workforce than I ever imagined, and really appreciated until we really started digging deep into it. So
And with
yeah,
people with a lot of credentials, I jokingly say that the number of letters that come after a nurse's name are the longest I see in academia.
absolutely.
They love those credentials and need them, and have needed them to validate
Yeah,
voice and impact and influence in healthcare in very unique ways. So let's talk about the nurse. Let's drill down on
yeah.
healthcare a little bit. What is the value of a digital credential to the health worker, the global health worker? If I'm a nurse, a global nurse, and I'm looking at my career opportunities both in country and potentially somewhere else. How can digital verifiable credentials help me navigate my career?
Great question. So there's a career pathway that you join the moment you decide to go to a nursing college of sorts. And that pathway is something that helps you start a journey for the rest of your life fundamentally. The chances of you wanting to be a nurse today and then being a bank teller tomorrow are very unlikely because you didn't join nursing because you had nothing better to do that day.
Right.
You're like, oh, which college am I going to pick today? You joined it because you had a passion for helping people, working with people, and making a difference in that bedside assistance with that doctor and with the patient that you're working with. Whether you're working with the elderly, whether you're working with children, whether you're working with the emergency side of the business, you're going to want to be there through and through. If you're a nurse in your home country and you're moving to another country, your passion for the patient care is ultimately the same. It's a human patient care that you take along with. It's universal.
Yeah.
And most recently, we learned very much so that it's the same thing in the veterinary space, where we get to work with veterinarians and veterinary nurses and doctors, and their passion for their patients, which happen to be animals in this case, it's not to be underestimated to say it's higher for a human than their animal patients.
And it also knows no geographic boundaries.
It doesn't, and that's the beautiful part about this. So imagine being a nurse and you're starting in, let's say you're starting in Kenya. We have some recent examples of work we're starting to see coming out of there. And you're looking to relocate somewhere around the world. The first thing you're probably going to think about is, okay, how do I immigrate? How do I make sure that I have all the right paperwork and that I can present my qualifications? And those qualifications, I think, Lea, you mentioned a little bit earlier, will start with your diploma from that said college, with your training certifications, any practicums you did with certain local hospitals that then gave you the proof that you are capable to start working in that profession and growing in that profession.
Yeah.
However, on the other side, when you're going to go immigrate, whether it's, let's use Canada because that's where we are today, or in the United States, you will have to have equivalencies, right? And those equivalencies might start from English or French or Spanish language proficiency, so you can work closer with your community that you're going to be servicing in those countries. It will come with your ability to bring proofs of your training certifications. I mean, CPR, right? Regardless of where you kind of took it globally, but it's about understanding the local health regulatory compliances for how to administer those specific training programs that you've gone through. And then those equivalencies are ultimately going to be your way in to be able to now take the rest of your courses or final courses in that countries where you're going to look to reside and practice, so that the folks there are comfortable with you being able to be practicing on their patients and in that bedside manner.
Yeah.
So having credentials that the employer can trust and rest assured that they have not been tampered with, that they are truly yours. And we're seeing, unfortunately, a significant amount of individuals that are, unfortunately, name collusion is becoming a big problem. So being able to bind those earned credentials to your foundational identity becomes incredibly powerful here. Because now you know with highest level of certainty and the employer knows with the highest level of certainty that those credentials truly belong to you.
Yep.
So having that, bridging the gap of digital identity and with what you're doing as an employer, you want to be able to bring that information directly into your organization, into your health and safety systems, into your operation systems, into your HR systems with the highest level of assurance and trust, such that as an employer, I don't have to ever look over my shoulder to say, is this individual really qualified, certified, and competent to do that particular job?
Yep.
So because of this, having digital portable credentials that are able to be translated into a system of record of that future employer with the highest level of trust become incredibly powerful tools at your fingertips that you can have.
Yeah.
When you go to, register with, let's say, the immigration services in Canada or the US, they want to see these proofs in order for them to give you their trust is in you is saying, and here's your landed immigrant status, and here's your work visa and
Yeah.
permit, right? So why would you ever take a chance to have them look over your records and have any doubt that those are not truly your credentials?
Yeah.
Why not just go through the entire process, have everything above board, be ready to work and operate, and ultimately make a better life for yourself and for your families back home, where we know that you want to be able to support everybody in your community, in your family. So this is why I truly, strongly believe that portable, digital, verifiable credentials that an individual can get right at the start of their career, or just as they start moving through this process of going between regions globally to service the community of healthcare professionals, I think they're critical.
I think some important important things to note or clarify there too. This isn't just to support immigration or a nurse that wants to move from one country to another. This is just as valuable to a health worker who studies and learns and gets licensed in the US and wants to stay in the
Absolutely.
US. And we all know you guys have regional boards in Canada, we have
Absolutely.
state boards. The qualifications are different from state to state. It's almost like going to another country sometimes in the US
100%.
when you're moving. So there's in-country mobility as well. And
Yes.
then, the other aspect too here, Dan, is there's multiple stakeholders on this secured digital highway that we're building, so to speak, that, all of everyone with a digital identity will now be mobilized on that digital highway. So you're talking regulators, you mentioned employers, there's academic institutions that need to verify things for you to step into potentially higher education or higher learning, and your digital credentials or transcripts are valuable for that as well. So let's talk about the other side of the picture, the verifying side. What's the value? You touched on that a little bit, to the person or entity, whether I'm a regulatory body, an employer, an academic institution, or anyone else that would need to verify the credential of that health worker. How does it streamline the process for them? I would imagine in this, we've talked about this a bit, our audience might need to picture this. The more people that are attached to this digital highway, the more employers, the more health systems that are attached to it, the more valuable that becomes, to streamline, to validate work experience, which is what we hear is one of the hardest things to validate, than transcripts or licensures, because it's hard to get that verification of experience, and that's sometimes the most critical factor that an employer is looking at. Great, you passed your NCLEX, you've got your license, but how much actual work experience have you had? And so, can you touch a little bit on how this will streamline on the employer, the verifier side, what they
Yeah.
really need to, and when we're talking in a time where there's critical shortage, they need to move people through these decisions quickly, get them onboarded, and get them at the bedside and helping them actually address some of their workforce challenges. So, can you touch on all that?
Absolutely. So interesting. I just came back from HIMSS
Yeah.
in Las Vegas, and for those of you that don't know HIMSS, it's one of the largest, if not the largest, conference probably in the world. 26,000 registered professionals were there this year, from manufacturers of devices to healthcare network providers to CIOs and CTOs of hospitals and other operations executives. And the message was clear. Lea, I literally sat in front of the registration booth and I just talked to people that were walking around. And I said, what is your typical onboarding time for an individual that works in your healthcare facility? And the average is between 9 to 12 weeks.
Yeah.
Just shortening that time frame alone, even if it's by a few weeks, let alone by a month would be just a drastic change to the industry. It's all based because of the lack of trust that exists. and the amount of due diligence that constantly has to happen.
Yeah.
So, you touched on something very important here, which is work history and work experience. Probably one of the highest pain points for all of these facilities, whether private or public healthcare, is work experience acknowledgement. Too many times have they seen people that just put their friends as their references, who've never once worked with them in their life. And that's what they're trying to bypass. They're trying to go around the opportunity of you providing a referenceable claim of somebody that doesn't actually know you from in a work-based environment.
Yeah.
So if there was a way in which that facility you worked at could actually issue you a digital verifiable credentials of proof of your employment history to say, Lea worked for this department under this, physician, had this kind of experience. They were here between this date and this date, and they
And
had all the
specialty
qualifications.
experience, because they want to know, is it
Absolutely.
peds? Is it critical care? That part of it's really critical too. Keep going. Sorry, I didn't mean to
Absolutely.
break in.
No, that's perfectly tied into this. And now, if this digital verifiable credential is signed, like cryptographically secured and signed with that hospital's identity and that HR offboarding manager's identity, now I can take it not at face value as the other employer that you're going to go apply for, but I can take it as the truth.
Yes.
Doesn't even have, like, face value is not even a concept. It's the truth. That credential could not have landed in my wallet if I didn't have actually earned it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that tie-in of that proof of that credential becomes so critical in how we can expedite this. Because let's be transparent here. I mean, if I'm coming in from another country and I'm going to be landing in state of Texas, and True Merit has set me up with all the things that I need to be able to present proof that I can work in the state of Texas. As you said earlier, you need different proofs for different states.
Yeah.
So, but I've now landed, but my employer is not ready to hire me for another 9 to 12 weeks. What do? I need to have all that additional capital in my bank to allow me to live out somewhere my 9 to 12 weeks, because my paycheck is not for another 4 afterwards. And then when I get employed, I'm going to spend a few more weeks out of that initial start date of just being trained and upskilled in the things that I need for that employer.
Yeah.
Well, what if these were parallel paths and they were not just a waterfall process of this must happen before this must happen? What if parts of it were waterfall and parts of it were agile? Where you can say, hey, while we gave you that offer letter, in the meantime, while we do this, and this, and this, why don't you also take this course and this course and this course? So then when you are hired, you can speed up that time to actually being employed.
Yeah.
So this is where the employers are now starting to say, hey, we would love to have these digital verifiable proofs for us to really be able to hire faster with higher confidence, and then everybody can benefit out of this process being more streamlined.
And you mentioned a really powerful word earlier that HIMSS has been promoting across systems for a long time, and that's interoperability. That's going to be critical. I know you're working with people on both ends of this scenario every day to make sure that that's a seamless process, because if it isn't, then it's not that much better than what we're dealing with now. So critical. Let's talk a little bit about Credivera and your solution. How do you differ from other providers of digital credentials, and how would you describe the scope of your solution and how it works?
Yeah, so I think where do I start? I'll say the following. There are digital badging solutions out there with certainty. There's other digital wallet solutions out there with certainty. What we were able to do that really stood us apart from others in the industry was we were able to bridge the gap between the employer, the issuer, and the holder of that credential in such a way in which they can create a single source of trust and truth of this information. And today, we've grown to over 10,000 issuers globally. We have the ability to verify information from your criminal background checks, the proof of education, proof of identity, proof of insurance, which by the way is a huge thing,
Yeah.
as people need to have that before they start work. Proof of training certifications. But what we brought a solution that allowed for the issuers and the verifiers of data to be able to work off of a seamless user experience. And the beneficiary ultimately at the end of the day is going to be the holder, who now has the rights to
Right.
not just receive the data, but share the data, selectively disclose parts of the data that they matter to them, being able to promote themselves on social media platforms and let the world know about their wins. And that's what's really made us really different, is we didn't approach this with one-sided solution. We didn't just build something for issuers. We built something that's interoperable for all. And we are interoperable with other wallets, right? Which also means that if you land in an employer's books where they have their own wallet inside of their own institution, these credentials are interoperable. So they're able to be portable and moved into that wallet for the proofs that are needed for that employer.
Yeah.
So we weren't looking to create a lock-in mechanism. We were looking to truly create something of value with true interoperability. And that's the approach we took from day one. And it's done us a whole lot of favors for
It's a
going down
good
this
approach
path.
because I don't think you build this ecosystem with closed pathways.
Well, you don't get 10,000 issuers
Yeah,
in
no,
a few years in this ecosystem without
exactly.
building an open and transparent standard.
Yeah. It's like when the internet launched on the World Wide Web, it wasn't really a World Wide Web with three people on it.
100%.
Yeah,
That's right.
you've got to you have to,
Yeah,
you have to figure those interoperability challenges out quickly and early so that what you're building has value to everybody
absolutely.
in the ecosystem. So kudos to you guys for figuring that out. So
Thank
what
you.
are we building together? We're bringing us towards the close of our discussion because we're really
Yeah,
excited. By the time this episode goes out, we will have issued our first digital verifiable credentials on the Credivera exchange to those who have passed our global certification exams in the last year that we launched out of our institute a little over a year ago. So we're excited about that. But that's just the start of what we're going to do together. How do you believe that digital credentials will be valuable to our applicants, the people that come through our doors, which some of them are here to take certification exams, some of them
yeah.
are here to have their credentials verified and evaluated for mobility and for licensure. So we're excited. What are your thoughts on what we're doing together?
I think True Merit took a massive step up, and when I say that, I mean it in all the best ways possible. Peter and the team, you guys have built something incredible under the brand of previously CGFNS, today True Merit, where you've built a golden standard of what it means for that nurse to be employed in that country after they have gone through your validations and qualifications and competencies and training. So our job is ultimately to just bring all of these proofs together under one portable digital solution and framework. And the other part of Credivera is to work with the hospitals such that they can, when an individual that comes forward with a True Merit set of credentials, stackable credentials, that third party institute can trust that these are unalterable, that they truly have been issued to them, and that these people are ready to work, which brings value to everybody in this. I call it the supply chain of the process, right? From the person to the issuer and to the verifier. This triangle of trust that's been created here with True Merit's truly golden standard for how you come and operate in a different country. You guys have done an incredible job. So we're so excited to be able to partner
Thank
with
you.
you and just go to that next level, really.
I got excited listening to that because you said the word true or truly several times in that response, which, as our marketing leader is exciting. I didn't even cue you up to say that, but it
No.
certainly does underscore our brand renaming and the brand evolution we've gone through in the last year. The fact that we are stepping into this space, and beginning to issue digital verifiable credentials is really our way of saying this is how true merit, your true merit as a
Yes.
global health worker is going to be secured and validated. We're here to support that process, and that this is a digitally true you. We should talk about true you.
Well, it's funny because we own
That's a
the
digital
brand
wallet.
Only You.
Yes,
So we
yeah.
do own the brand Only You, which is just going to be relaunched here in the next few
That's so
months.
great. We're thinking along
But
the same lines
yeah,
for
I
sure.
mean, Leah, if there's one other item that I can add to this is, for those that are listening, whether you are or not part of the True Merit ecosystem, you always want to walk forward with your best foot forward, right? And you want to be there and present to somebody else that you are who you claim to be. You've got the credentials and qualifications that allow you to do that job, and that you are the qualified person that the employer should trust. And at the end of the day, this is where understanding who you as an individual are going to partner with to give you that brand identity for the things you've worked so hard for to achieve over the years.
Yeah.
Because you might not be a recently graduating nurse that's going to do this. You might be somebody who's been practicing for 10, 15, 20 years, and you're just going through this global mobility workforce and work stream.
Yeah.
Knowing who you're partnering with is going to be very critical. And this is why when we partner with True Merit, it was very much because we saw what you guys are able to do. And I mean, you know, being a part of the WHO and having always stood up to the highest standards globally for your workforce that you represent, that's where it's bar none, right? For me as to
Yeah.
why would I not do it this way? So
That's some of
kudos
why
to
I
you guys.
underscored earlier that, a lot of these hoops and doorways that global workers have to go through feel like barriers. They feel like gatekeeping. They feel like control.
100%.
And while there are regulatory, boundaries around those, and certainly that are in
As there
place,
should be.
and there should be,
Yeah.
absolutely,
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
downstream, no matter where you're working in the world as a healthcare worker, we're all in agreement that patient safety is paramount, right? And doing what's best
Absolutely.
for global health. But the reality is, we continue to shape our message around, no, these are gateways for you. There's nothing more frustrating than knowing you have the experience, you know that you're skilled, you know that you've done the work that you've done, the knowledge that you carry, the skills that you have earned, and then not be able to prove that you have them, not be able to validate that, yes, I am
Yeah.
capable of stepping in and being a value add to your organization right now. There just feel like a lot of barriers in the way.
Yeah.
So this
Yeah,
is
I
one
know.
of the ways that we're committed to, you know, not only supporting those regulatory requirements, but really supporting the global health worker and being able to validate who they are and what they've done. Everyone that's earned those things deserves pathways that are unfettered and unhindered by the barriers to be able to prove that they've done what they've done and who they say they are. So to me, this is the next step in streamlining and enabling that,
Yeah.
and really cutting down on a lot of the time and the red tape and the confusion, of getting people through these processes. The people on both ends, the nurse and the hospital that needs the nurse, they need
Yeah.
all of that that's in the middle. They need that
Yeah.
pathway cleared, and this is one of the
And
ways to do it.
and I can't stress enough how much fraud there is around the
Yeah,
world.
we could probably talk about that for a long time.
Literally.
Yeah,
And at the end of the day, why shouldn't you be recognized
yeah,
for the hard work and the years you've put in behind it, and stand up above anybody else that is coming at it from a shortcut perspective,
yeah,
right? Like I have yet to meet a person who's truly gone through everything that they've done and then say, I'm not passionate about what I'm doing And therefore I went and I just bought a package of credentials because I wanted to cut corners.
Yeah.
So being on top of being recognized for all the hard work you've done and the years and the sweat and the probably a lot of the blood and the tears that come along with it, right, in the profession, you've earned it, right? Show it, stay proud behind it, and let others know that this is why they're hiring you versus somebody else who's trying to cut corners. So this is that irrefutable proof, fundamentally.
Absolutely. Well, we are at the end of our time, and I couldn't think of a better way for you to have landed and closed that out, Dan, by encouraging the health workers in our ecosystem to understand this value and why this is something to embrace, not to be fearful or hesitant about, that it's really going to be a value add and help them be able to move freely about the world and in their careers, and not just mobility in terms of physical movement, but upward mobility, advancements, which we really didn't touch on. But this is also about supporting the ability of these health workers to work at the top of their licensure, to work at the maximum level of their skills, to have the greatest opportunities for advancement, and the ability to influence the evolution of care moving forward. So thank you so much for everything that you unpacked here. We're very excited to be working with Credivera. It's a great partnership. Thanks so much. Any final thoughts or anything you want to add as we close out?
No, I think you guys have done a phenomenal job, and again, kudos to True Merit for taking this step forward and making this a reality for those that are just going to hear about it. But you guys are like, no, this is how it's actually going to be, and here's the easiest way for you to get there. So kudos to True Merit.
For your passion for building this solution. We couldn't do it without you. You guys are a great partner,
and I couldn't do it without the rest of my team.
Yes,
I can dream about this all I want, but if I didn't have the team behind us that would be able to program and create this kind of a pathway for everybody and hold true to the global regulatory compliances, and participate in building these global regulatory compliances with your voices, right? This is something that's incredibly critical, is to say, we're taking this as technologists back to those that are creating these pathways and saying, here's what we're hearing from boots on the ground. So all the feedback from you guys will be critical to developing the continuing evolution of these standards.
Dan, thank you so much. Thanks for being here. Appreciate
pleasure.
the conversation. All right, everybody, that's the end of this incredible episode. If you want to find out more about Credivera, you can find them at credivera.com. And you'll be hearing more from True Merit about the digital verifiable credentials we are issuing and will continue to issue as this evolves. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time. That's it for this episode of Care Anywhere. Thanks for joining us. We hope you'll tune in for future episodes where we will continue these powerful discussions about our global health workforce. If you missed any episodes, you can find them at truemerit.org/podcast or by subscribing to our channel on your favorite podcast platform. Just look for our podcast logo or search for Care Anywhere to find us. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.